Hello, viewers. Today we are here to especially talk about the subject of health, and mainly to take a psychosomatic approach to organic and mental illnesses. Because on many occasions, psychiatrists state that mental illnesses originate from deformities, from problems, from neurohormonal imbalances, to cerebral substances that would be lacking or in excess. And the cause would be, therefore, organic, and on many occasions neurological, linked to psychic emotional disturbances. What can be said about organic illnesses is that they are without a shadow of a doubt dealt with in a traditional medicine, as if they were of organic etiology, therefore in the physical and material world. We have a different point of view, and based on the discoveries and research made by Dr. Kepi, who has been accomplishing this for many years, and recently with the collaboration of the infectologist and immunologist Dr. Roberto Giraldo, who is providing invaluable contributions to this field of research in terms of the faults in the person's immune system and even that of infections. We have verified the importance of the emotional world in the treatment of these illnesses, and the importance of the emotional life in the explanation of the etiology of the same illnesses. Today we are going to show you some videos in which Dr. Giraldo is going to explain better how our emotions can even act within our blood and in the functioning of our blood. Dr. Kepi has been accomplishing his work in the field of psychosomatic medicine within the Hospital of Clinics of the University of São Paulo, where he began his work many years ago, and where he created, together with Professor Edmundo Vasconcelos, within Professor Edmundo Vasconcelos' clinic, in the sector of psychosomatic medicine that attended a number of clinics inside the hospital. Dr. Kepi has also given classes as a guest professor at the Hospital of the Clinics to nurses and doctors, and already in those days he saw that the psychic part is very fundamental.
Look, I wrote a book at that time, and since then this book has been used in medical universities. It's entitled Medicine of the Soul, so that students of medicine can verify the importance of the emotional factors in the organic processes. Not only mental problems, because we know that the origin of mental illness is nearly always emotional, but organic illnesses, even ulcers, infections, and now this issue of the swine flu is a very controversial issue, because these masks, for example, that people are using to avoid infections are of no use whatsoever. What one has is more in line with another sector that Béchamp developed. Imagine, more than 150 years ago, Béchamp, Enderlein, Claud Bernard were showing the nature of illnesses, even those that are called infectious. And even though Pasteur presented the idea that the cause of illnesses was linked to an outside infection, these illnesses have their origin in the person's interior life. So I'd like to say something important to you. Consider well. The issue, for example, of this so-called epidemic, this swine flu epidemic, is not quite what it's made up to be. It's an influenza like any other that the world has ever had, which comes and then with time goes away with the same ease that it appeared. Therefore, it's not a question of one infecting another with this flu. What I'm going to show you is a discovery that these three geniuses made so many years ago. and who the economic power have been hiding, covering up. Because if this is proven, then all medications will suffer a great retraction throughout the world market. Because mainly in relation to influenza, there are no means of avoiding it by people who have a disposition to catching it. Notice, there is an internal disposition that people have of catching the flu, and mainly in cold regions when winter arrives. So, I'd like to present this chart to you. Let's take a look.
The origin of illnesses. Blood is made up of 3 factors: serum, cells, and microzymes.
Do you know that these 3 elements, mainly this last one, assigned the name microzymas, are seen only through a dark field microscope? And not all universities and colleges of medicine have such a microscope. But researchers have used it. More specifically, private researchers have used this microscope in order to see the origin of illnesses within the human being's interior. So, what happens is that these 3 researchers had an understanding that illness arises from within the individual and not from external factors. I'm going to present to you now Dr. Geraldo, who will give you a quick rundown on the origin of illnesses in relation to these 3 factors.
Aquí en la Sociedad Internacional de Teología Analítica en San Pablo, estamos haciendo una pesquisa usando un microscopio de campo oscuro e para ver a influencia das emoções negativas, a psicopatologia da pessoa sobre os elementos sanguíneos. Aqui, por exemplo, vemos uma pessoa super depresiva, destructiva, arrogante, y ahora se ve en estas pequeñas esferas que son los glóbulos vermelhos, se ven cambios en la membrana, deformidades, muchas deformidades, y además no solo se ven estas pequeñas boliñas que son endobiontes o microcimas, que están evolucionando hacia bacterias, ellas se fusionan inclusive a formar fungos dentro de la sangre, una sangre tremendamente patológica como consecuencia de la psicopatología de la persona. Una de las cosas que hemos observado en las personas cuando hacemos esta pesquisa es que a mayor cantidad de psicopatología, mientras más envidiosa sea la persona, más depresiva, más autodestructiva, raivosa, con ira, inflexible, arrogante, más alterada está la sangre. Aquí, por ejemplo, vemos una persona llena de miedos, temores, rigidez, intolerante, depresiva, con pánicos, y usted ve que todos los glóbulos vermelhos, estas boliñas, están alteradas, la membrana se ve toda alterada. Algunos de ellos están ya lisados y tienen esto que se llama radicales libres, y se observa también no solo estas pequeñas partículas que son endobiontes, algunos de ellos mudando a bacterias, y acá se ve una célula blanca, un monocito súper patológico con estos filamentos de fibrina. Es una sangre súper alterada, es una persona con un grado alto de psicopatología.
Continuing then in this work, The Origin of Illnesses, referring back to the chart, take a look at what I've written in second place.
Based on the human being's conduct, their blood can become altered.
What do I mean by this? Pasteur's so-called bacteriological infection does not work the way Pasteur said it does, that illness would come from outside. But rather, a person has to be weakened. The organic structure of his blood has to be altered due to negative emotions, so as to fall into the same vibrational level as the flu that other people have. So we can say that it's not a contamination that comes from others, in the sense that Pasteur said, as to how we get sick, but rather It is a same-sick conduct that causes any type of illness that the human being has. So take a look now in third place.
This is the origin of all mental and organic illnesses that the human being suffers. If medicine does not observe the psychological components, which are related to emotions and ideas, man will not achieve a total cure.
You will notice that with Béchamp's discovery, this shows that medicine has quite possibly been following a totally erroneous direction. That is, the idea based on the issue that it is bacteria that is infecting people, always from the outside to the inside. And it just doesn't work like this. So then, as was mentioned, Pasteur was totally wrong. And there would now need to be a restructuring of medicine into a true medicine in order for the human being to be able to take care of himself in a correct way.
We'll be back shortly.
Even if we don't have a lot of consciousness, we can perceive that life is divine. We live in transcendence, whether we accept it or not. We still live in an earthly paradise, except we don't accept it. In fact, we attack what is most beautiful, good, and real. Consciousness of our envy and inversion will make it possible for us to return to this paradise we've abandoned. We don't need to build it. We just need to accept it. The Stop the Destruction of the World Association was created to bring about exactly this consciousness. We are working to return the world to goodness. Join us.
Many people have already, based on intuition, people who are older, those who are in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, based on intuition said, what a shame that those doctors who existed in the good old days, who treated their patients based on the person's family history, on their habits, on their eating habits, based on the family's weak points, and those who were sensitive don't exist anymore. And some of them, based on a certain amount of intuition, take into consideration the emotional factors. So a determined person suffered a stress or the death of a dear one, and he becomes unemployed, or is very high-strung, and all of this was taken into consideration so as to evaluate the person's state of health. And many people wonder, where have these doctors gone? Today we are able to see that medicine has stepped away from a more real attitude, one that is more realistic. And Dr. Kepi mentioned in the first block, in the days of Béchamp, of Claud Bernard, of Enderlein, when they began the study of stress, medicine was going in the correct direction. And later, based on the influence of thought and conduct that American doctors like Carnegie in the Flexner Report as an example, they lost track of medicine, which gradually entered into a field that was not only materialistic, but out of reality and very paranoid.
Into the economic field, isn't it?
That's right. All of this happened for the exclusive benefit of the pharmaceutical and medical hospital industry. And doctors who were graduating from universities were leaving with modifications in their curriculums. A person would enter a university with the idea of serving the human being, but ended university learning with how to serve the pharmaceutical and medical hospital industry, with overall losses to the human being. I believe that there are many professionals who need to know about this, in fact, to be informed, and they aren't. Of these great doctors who existed in the past, such as these that Dr. Kepi, Dr. Geraldo cited in the last programs.
First, I'd like to show you a photo of Antoine Béchamp. Let's see. This Frenchman discovered what are called microzymas, and which are responsible for the individual's health. Seeing the inversion that has been accepted in this field, what I'm noticing, for example, is that bacteria, bacillus or virus, would be elements that help the organism to have a normal, healthy life. And this idea of Pasteur's completely destroyed the idea that these bacteria are useful and good. Take a look now at a second doctor who accompanied Béchamp in Germany and who was also hidden, covered up by the economic powers, because the economic powers don't want to stop selling medicines. Take a look now.
Gunther Enderlein.
Gunther Enderlein called Béchamp's microzemas by the name of endobiontians, but it is obviously the same phenomenon. And a third, who brought forth a great benefit to medicine, and who has also been forgotten, is, take a look at who he was.
Claud Bernard.
Now, I would like to show you another chart about the origin of what I call the psychoorganics of illnesses, based on Béchamp. Let's see.
The psychoorganic origin, based on Béchamp. He discovered microzymes, or endobiontes, that preserved the human being's health.
Now, I would like to present here for our viewers what the orientation was that these authors gave. This true, authentic medicine, but which was hidden, covered up, and can be observed by any specialist or researcher if he has a dark field microscope.
En personas con alteraciones psicológicas severas, por ejemplo con bulimia, o también con anorexia, raivosas, intolerantes, rígidas. Se pueden ver diferentes alteraciones en la sangre. Por ejemplo, se ven alteraciones en los glóbulos vermelhos, en la forma, los tamaños de ellos, alteraciones en la membrana de los glóbulos vermelhos, y se ve este glóbulo blanco quietiño, paralizado. Las emociones negativas, los medios de la persona no dejan elemecer para cumplir su función de defensa. Y esta formación que está acá es un simplasto, que se forma debido a un exceso de fibrina en una sangre ácida, que es una consecuencia de emociones negativas debido a la psicopatología de la persona. Y esto va impidiendo que la sangre cumpla su función de transporte de oxígeno o de nutrientes a todos los tejidos.
As you can see, through Dr. Geraldo's explanation, that the danger a person can find himself in is not so linked to the external environment. Because Béchamp, for example, said that people become sick due to what they eat, due to what they breathe, from what they drink, and even in relation to the issue of baths. That this can cause illnesses. But we go a step further. We go to the fundamental cause. And consider this well. I had already written about this in this book here that I showed you, called The Medicine of the Soul. We were already talking about this in the 60s. So, there are some universities who make use of my work, and theses have been written based on this. That is, what is really vitally important is the psychological factor, the factor of emotions, that unfortunately medical schools don't all broach this subject. Now, let's refer to the chart again, in second place.
These microorganisms are similar to particles that form matter.
These microorganisms, that is to say, the microzemas and the endobiontians, are the equivalent to particles. Because when a physicist studies physics, mainly with an electronic microscope, what can be seen is the formation of particles, of fragments that appear here and there. But these are already the result of a prior energy, that forms everything that exists. Therefore, what is lacking in medicine is the same as what is lacking in physics, because physics thinks that all energy comes from matter. So all energy comes, for example, from particles. And due to this, they made this huge cyclotron over there in Switzerland, which obviously didn't work, because it's not the fusion of two particles, for example, proton and electrons, that make matter. A particle is already the beginning of matter. In the same way, for example, microsemas and the endobiontines that Enderlein spoke of are already a result of energy, and not something that makes energy. Because in general, the body contains the same phenomenon as matter. Energy is what makes the particles in physics and the microsemas and endobiontines in the human being's interior. And if the human being receives these elements well, if he has a favorable emotional state, then he is never going to get sick. And just look, this is the direction to take, for example, to form immortality in the human being's life. And if we are able to correct this, the human being will return to his original state of immortality, because what is normal for the human being is to be immortal. Now let's see the chart thirdly.
Microzymes or endobiontes or particles originate from essential energy. All the psychological or physical ills arise from the deformation of essential energy based on bad feelings and bad ideas.
Do you perceive? If this were able to be understood by new researchers in physics and medicine, then we will have a solution to human problems, and mainly the issue of aging. I always say that a person shouldn't be allowed to die before 80 years of age. And people living today, right now, you who are tuned into us now, can have a normal life expectancy of 120, 150 years of age, now, already. Especially if you don't take so much medicine, avoid being very bitter, and mainly if you don't have so much depression, paranoia, aversions, and psychological disturbances. So if one corrects as Christ oriented us, I think that this is real Christianity, that the human being acts according to how he oriented in terms of internal issues. Christ says that evil comes from the human being's interior. It does not come from the outside. This is something that everyone knows, those who know at least a little of what is in the Bible. So, see you next program.